Well, the clock is ticking toward the federal budget vote on Monday, but the minority Liberal government still needs 2 votes to pass it in the House of Commons. Whether they get those votes is still unclear.
100% of our MPs oppose the costly Carney credit card budget.
Bloc Québécois MPs have also said they will vote no, and the NDP hasn't revealed how it will vote. If the budget does not pass, it would force a new election during the upcoming holiday season. Well, the budget includes moves to lower immigration targets. Lloyd Axworthy is a former chair of the World Refugee and Migration Council and a longtime Canadian public policy leader. And he joins us now to share his perspective on what some of these shifts might mean for immigrant support and Canada's international commitments. Thank you so much for being on the program with us.
Well, thanks, Linda. It's good to be here.
You know, this has been an eventful week for you, retiring as chair of the World Refugee and Migration Council. But you're leaving with some concerns still about Canada's refugee policy, specifically, and I want to point out your concerns about the Safe Third Country Agreement. This is a long-standing pact. We know that with the United States. You've aired some of your concerns about this in the past. Why now? Why speak out about this again now?
Well, I think because the whole agreement was based on a premise that Canadians and Americans had similar values when it came to receiving strangers and people seeking sanctuary. Of course, Donald Trump has totally turned that upside down and has turned the United States system into a regressive and illegal and punishing kind of treatment. And it seems a little ludicrous that we rely upon American determination of who's a refugee based upon Trump values. And I think, we should be establishing our own policy. It would take time, it would take resources to do it. But I think for us to continue under this so-called third safe party agreement really makes us complicit in the kind of nasty, mean, and unlawful efforts that the Trump administration is securing on people who are seeking a sanctuary or asylum.
So you mentioned time, you mentioned resources, but how do you really do that? How do you change the conversation between these two countries that have had this pact for so long about how do we navigate this relationship going forward?
Well, it's not easy. Mr. Trump is not a negotiator. He's a bully, and it's hard to make any kind of agreements or consensus. One of the things that the World Refugee Migration Council we put forward a couple of years ago was that we should move away from determining these issues on a bilateral Canada-U.S. basis. It's time for a much broader regional hemispheric migration agreement where countries in the Americas and North America come together to work out a collaborative way of dealing with the fact that there are large numbers of people who are being uprooted because of the threats of crime and conflict, and increasingly of climate issues, of drought and floods. This is simply, it's a hard reality, and it's not going away. And the answer is not Mr. Trump's answer, which is to try to put up the walls. I think Canada could be taking a lead in developing a much more collaborative effort, but we can't do that as long as we hung around our neck this kind of agreement that basically says we're playing along with the Trump cards that he's dealing.
Okay, let's delve a little bit deeper into that, specifically in Canada's federal policy when it comes to immigration, when it comes to refugees. You know, you served a long time as immigration minister, both under Pierre Trudeau and Jean Chrétien. You have a lot of experience in this file. We've got a budget before us. There's some changes in there, as we mentioned, when it comes to Canada's immigration policy. So what are your thoughts on the current budget and the direction of federal policy on this file?
Well, I think our direction is still pretty piecemeal. I mean, we're trying to respond, and I can understand the effort by the government to correct the mistakes that were made in the past of doubling up on our numbers without providing any further investment in housing or education or healthcare. But the answer is not to provide even more regressive actions. We're talking about charging a fee to refugees to come. Well, these people don't exactly have a bank account with a TD. They're fleeing fear. They're fleeing conflict. They're fleeing the fact that their kids are going to be sort of kidnapped by war gangs and warlords. So putting measures like that sends a signal that we're blaming refugees, we're blaming immigrants, we're blaming asylum seekers for the problems, when in fact we've made some bad policy choices. And furthermore, we're giving up on the idea that this is a problem, a big problem that has to be dealt with on a multilateral basis with other countries, with the private sector, with the refugee groups themselves. This is something that can't be conjured up in some offices in Ottawa. It has to be based on a much broader examination in Parliament and amongst Canadians.
I only have a few seconds left, but as you leave your post and reflect on all of the experience that you've had over the years as immigration minister, your advice for the Carney government on this file?
I'm going to pass on, Linda, the advice I received from Ron Atkey, who was the immigration minister in Mr. Clark's government. And they had initiated the whole movement of people from the Indochina Peninsula. And he bought me lunch one day. Maybe that doesn't happen very often anymore. But he said, being an immigration minister is you have a sacred trust to totally honor the fundamental rights of people seeking sanctuary and asylum, but also the sacred trust of ensuring that Canadians have confidence in the system. And I think that we're beginning to fall back on both those requirements. My recommendation is let's go back and treat this as a fundamental issue of human rights and make the investment and the resources capable of responding in a coherent and fair-minded way, as opposed to buying into the kind of negative narrative that we hear from so many other people in this country who are indisposed to making this country a fair and open place to reside.
Lloyd Axworthy, great to get your thoughts on this today. We really appreciate you taking the time for us.
Thank you, Linda. It was nice to be here.
Lloyd Axworthy speaking to us from Ottawa.